Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you, as always, by the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Nick Brlansky. As always, I'm joined by Nick Horwat, and we are here on a special Wednesday live edition of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, as we are live in the midst of the Seattle Kraken Expansion Draft, at least the official showing of the Seattle Kraken Expansion Draft, which most people know. We knew all these picks at about noon Eastern today, but it is now official that two former Penguins have been selected by the Kraken. Jared McCann, who spent a cup of tea, if that, in Toronto, is now on the Kraken. And so is Brandon Tanev, who was there in person sporting the new Kraken road uniforms. But Horwat, we have a lot to get to because as Hunter Hodes, a good friend of ours and the host of the Locked On Penguins podcast, has said, we got cap space, and that is the big thing that we will be taking away and discussing about the Pittsburgh Penguins and the fallout from the expansion draft for Seattle. Obviously, you're wearing a Seattle Kraken shirt. I don't have any Kraken gear, but I'm sporting the other expansion team, most recent expansion team, some Vegas Golden Knights gear. But like we mentioned, Brandon Tanev selected from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jared McCann selected, quote unquote, from the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Horwat, before we get into all this, what have you thought of the expansion so far? Because they're still about halfway through the show, but so far so good, I guess I could say. What do you think?
Well, because all of the picks were leaked and reported and tweeted out earlier in the day, I've had legitimately zero interest to watch it. So I've been watching the Hockey Podcast Network stream that we were going to be part of, but then we decided to do this. So sorry, guys, but hey, watched Steve Dangle for a few minutes until I realized it's just him and Jesse talking. So that's not as fun. And I've just been kind of flipping through streams because, again, I have no interest in watching, knowing that the team's right here. If you listen to the full episode tomorrow/today, whenever you're listening to this may be, in our Shadows and Calls, we get into why I'm mad at certain people about this whole situation. But for what it's worth, it seems like people are enjoying it. People are there, and people are happy for this team and excited for this team, as you should be. Mm-hmm. I think the lineup that we saw all tweeted out, it's not that strong, but they have plenty of cap space to get stronger.
Yeah.
And the window is not over. We do have cap space. I mentioned Tanev in a very scathing article I wrote the other day. So, yeah, no, it's cap space is probably the only good thing to come from this.
I think there's a couple other good things. And when you talk about the Seattle Kraken, obviously the pick from the Seattle Kraken for the Pittsburgh Penguins is Brandon Tanev, as we expected. Or before we get into what this means for the Pittsburgh Penguins, where they sit now with the expansion draft over, I do want to talk about Tanev himself. And you can't do that without talking about the fact that we were very, I don't know how to say this, kind of hesitant whenever the Penguins signed Tanev, as a lot of people were when they saw the contract that Jim Rutherford signed him to, it initially being a 6-year deal with a $3.5 million average annual value. I mean, if you look at it now, and now that it's over, we had Brandon Tanev on technically a 2-year deal worth $3.5 million. That's pretty good value right there.
Yeah, and we got some good work out of him. It's not like it was totally horrible, but it was not a good signing, and it was one that I said on multiple occasions at the end of every season, because of the style of game he plays, you have to kind of review it and know if this, and, you know, make an assessed judgment of if it's still going to be worth it going into another year, because he's prone to have a sharp decline in play. Let's put it bluntly, just the way it is. The way he plays, it could be just a sharp decline. For now, he's okay. Seattle's getting a hell of a player with him, but who really knows where he's going to play, because Mike Sullivan loved to play him in the bottom six.
Yeah, Mike Sullivan had him in the bottom six a lot. I'm trying to bring a video up here. I'm not sure whether or not it's going to play. Just a couple of Tanev highlights. He wasn't a guy that scored a lot of goals for the Pittsburgh Penguins in his time here. He did score a couple big goals. I know the one on the screen right now is his overtime goal against the Colorado Avalanche, his first goal as a Pittsburgh Penguin. But last season, only 7 goals, 16 points, 30 in 32 games played. He did deal with injuries, as you mentioned, and that was a huge thing. I'm just going to take this off the screen. It's kind of lagging. But as you mentioned, he plays a very rough style of game. He likes to hit, and he even said that on the ESPN broadcast just now because he was in person for the Seattle Kraken selection. Yep. And he said he likes to hit, and it's a tough game that he likes to play, and that will wear down on him. And I think the problem with that being in 4 years, when he's still worth $3.5 million, we saw him only play 32 games this season. If he continues to play that game, does he continue to get injured? No one really knows. But at this point in time, the Pittsburgh Penguins lose Brandon Tanev and his $3.5 million cap hit. If you look at what Tanev brought, I think more than anything, he brought charisma and he brought personality. And that's why he was a fan favorite. And a lot of fans were upset whenever Tanev's name started getting thrown in. And I understand it. Trust me. I really enjoyed Brandon Tanev as a Pittsburgh Penguin, especially this past season. I mean, it started with the headshot. You have the mustard pack and everything like that. Him basically punching Crosby or pushing Crosby over and in a mic'd up segment. We enjoyed Brandon Tanev while he was here, but at the same time, he was a fourth liner, and we need to look at it in the way that we can look at it now, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins just cleared up a grand total of around $7.5 million in cap space.
Yeah.
A little bit of wiggling room for Ron Hextall, who inherited, as you mentioned in your article that you wrote, a very, very tough situation.
No, it was all the decisions he made from the past few years. I mean, we don't need to dig completely into the past few years, but it kind of started with the whole Ryan Reeves situation. And then shortly after that, this deal was signed of, Tanev for however many years for 3.5, which again, the number isn't terrible, but it's the term, the length of that contract, and the fact that he had a modified no trade clause that was 10 teams. Good luck trading that. Like I said, if the sharp decline hits, it hurts. And he was also, I forget if he lasted a year longer or ended the same year as Crosby.
He ended the same year as Crosby. Him and Crosby equaled out in how long that they were under contract as the longest forwards signed for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think Gensel's out there now too.
I actually don't think Gensel is. Right now, our longest tenured player is Marino, followed by Matheson, and then Sid.
Yeah. I was talking about forwards, but yeah, you're right on with the defenseman there.
Oh, forwards. Yeah, I think it is Gensel.
Gensel and Sid are the two leading ones because Gino's contract is up after next season, which we still have plenty to talk about with that. Not on this episode, but before we continue talking about the Seattle Kraken, I do want to mention the winners of our Pittsburgh Clothing Company giveaway. We're going to do that right now. Why not? We're 10 minutes into the live stream. For any of you watching, if you entered, it was pretty close. There was about 35 people that entered, and we're giving away two shirts. So it's a good opportunity, very low, or I guess high odds. And the winners are at DLock13 and at the only Pittsburgh Trish. So congratulations to the both of them. We will put a post out on our Twitter page at Ice-Burgh Podcast, and we will also send them a direct message trying to get which t-shirt they want, which size, and where we can send it to. But congratulations to you two. We are at right now about 806 followers on Twitter. I'm just going to say this. If we get to 1,000 before the season starts, there's going to be another giveaway, and it's going to be one of the best giveaways we've done so far. So definitely, if you want to retweet this, if you want to tag us in anything, if we get to 1,000 followers before the start of the NHL season, there's going to be another really good giveaway. I'm sure we'll do another giveaway to start the season, but if we're at 1,000, it's just going to be that much better.
Right, yeah, and yeah, shout out to the winners. I missed the names. I was trying to look for something, but yeah, shout out to the winners. Go get you a get yourself a Tanev shirt while you can, man, from the company. Who knows? Those are some of their better shirts, but get those while you can. Maybe find a new one. I'm sure they'll have new designs coming soon too. So who knows? But yeah, absolutely keep an eye out for more giveaways. Always
more giveaways and more content. That's basically what we're about here at the Tip of the Iceberg. We like to give things away, and we like to give content as best as we can, at least. But let's talk about the other Pittsburgh Penguin that was taken in the Seattle Expansion Draft. I guess technically not a Penguin. He was taken from the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's Jared McCann. This selection, both Dominic Moore and Fowler said that McCann could be the Jonathan Marchessault / William Karlsson of this year's expansion draft, where he goes off next year and kind of makes a name for himself. Horwat, do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, you know what, I kind of do, because he's going to be on a team that, barring any big signings or big trades, he's going to be one of the better goal scorers on there. Him and Eberle, but I mean, Eberle might not even be able to carry the load anymore. Because I look at this roster and I really do wonder who else can score. It's between him,
Yanni Gourde,
yeah, and that's someone's got to have to pop. Someone's going to have to pop off, and it may as well be him, because we know he is someone who already has that ability. He just needs to utilize it and find his consistency, because that was, one of his low points while with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, consistency was the major word when talking about Jared McCann. And if you look at it now, as I mentioned earlier, with McCann coming off the books for no cap penalty for the Pittsburgh Penguins, with Brandon Tanev coming off the books, those two combined alone create $6.45 roughly $1 million in cap space, which again, I said totals them out at 7.4 with a week to go before the free agency period. That gives them probably more space than they've had since.
Oh. We good?
Am I back or am I still frozen?
I can hear you.
Okay, well, if you can hear me, then we can continue. I was just saying that this is a lot of cap space, and there's going to be more, because Frank Saravalli, who we talked about plenty in our shout-outs and call-outs that are coming up, he did put out that following the expansion draft, the Penguins are going to be looking also to move Marcus Pettersson and Tristan Jarry as a priority. That's going to be one of their top priorities, is trying to move those guys out. Wesley Reed, who is a big listener of the podcast and has been supporting us for a while, he asked that very question. Do you think Hextall will try to move Pettersson this offseason? Yes. In fact, there's reports that, again, like I said, Saravalli reported that is going to be a priority now that the Seattle expansion draft is over. So not even started, really, barely the tip of the iceberg, if you will, on the moves made by Ron Hextall. I know you made that pun last episode, but I figured I'd give it a call back.
Absolutely, because it's a great pun for us. And yeah, it's this upcoming offseason. I remembered this in between our recordings today. How many times did we say after Rutherford left that this offseason for the Penguins is going to be a doozy? It's going to be there. We thought there could be, fire sales of players. There could be drastic changes. I think at some point or another, there was always the talk. I mean, there's always been the talks of could Malkin or Letang be on the trading block? Well, we've got the confirmation that that's not happening, but everyone else is pretty much free game. And, with McCann being a player you would think was a necessity to keep around, he's gone. Well, now there's Pettersson probably getting moved out with Jarry, who, at the beginning of the season, we thought Jarry's our guy. He's the number one. Rutherford signed him to a deal that, wasn't awful, but it's starting to look awful since he has not looked good. So yeah, like we mentioned, hey, this if the Penguins fall apart, which they did, there's gonna be hell to pay. And here we are. We're in it. McCann was the first
casualty.
First casualty, as I put it, yeah. And then Tanev, you're not going to call it a casualty because there kind of was no real maneuver that was made by the team for that to happen. Just He was just taking the expansion draft, just hard luck. And now other casualties that could be following are Pettersson and Jari, which Pettersson is not as surprising. That's a deal you want to get off the books now. And Jari, that's the shocking one, but it is what it is. And your former goalie general manager wants to see a good goalie in there. Former Conn Smythe winning goalie, I should say.
Yeah, when you look at those guys in Pettersson and Jari, we already talked about the space that is available because of what we've seen in the expansion draft. But if you take those two out, I understand that we're probably going to be bringing back cap space in one of those two moves. But if you take those two out, there's $14.97 million in salary cap space. For Pittsburgh Penguins fans that have been staring down the barrel at the gun that is the Penguins cap-friendly page, I don't think I've seen that since I started actually using cap-friendly. That much
cap geek.
Yeah, that much salary cap space. So it's something that's going to be interesting because we don't know what Hextall is going to do. We know he's looking to upgrade in net. We know that he likes some of the players that he has in the system, like a P.O. Joseph. We don't know where we're going to see Sam Poulin or Nathan Legare. We might even see Philip Hollander in the NHL before we see those two, who we just acquired from Toronto, and the Jared McCann deal. So there's a lot that is yet to happen in this offseason, and it's already the end of July. Yeah. We only have 2 months till the start of the regular season. So it's going to be a wild ride, and it all starts next week during training. Not training camp, but starting with the free agency period. The Penguins do have some draft picks coming up. Not many. If you want to know who they're going to take, I'm not the one to tell you. Go read Jesse Marshall's piece in The Athletic that went out on Wednesday. They have a 2nd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and 3 7th-round picks. And that is it. So not a lot of draft capital, as everybody already knows that. But, I mean, if you look at those long-term, kind of higher-priced contracts that Ron Hextall and Brian Burke inherited whenever they came to Pittsburgh, they've unloaded a couple of them now. Brandon Tanev, they unloaded. I mean, Jared McCann's wasn't long-term, but they unloaded a bigger contract. We'll see what he does with it. I like the value of McCann's current contract, but if they can circumvent that into a goaltender that's pretty good, or a goaltender that, I'll throw a name out there, John Gibson. I know it's probably not going to happen, but a goaltender of that caliber, it's worth it. It is worth it because you do have the players to replace him. We don't know. We expected Jason Zucker to be gone tonight. He's not. That's $5.5 million. If that's moved on from, that's even more cap space. So you're looking at a Penguins team that there's several moves to be made, and I'm not exactly sure what moves they're going to be.
Yeah. We don't know what they're going to be. And don't forget, we have that cap space. We still have a couple of free agents we got to re-sign. And at the beginning of all of this, before McCann was traded, before Tanev got taken off, we had no room. We had $1 million in cap space and had 3 forward wise. We had 3 restricted free agents. You're not signing those 3 guys in under $1 million. Zach Aston-Reese himself is going to garner a little more than that. Which, by the way, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's talk about that a little bit. We do still retain Zach Aston-Reese's RFA, but I think they'll sign him for $1.5 million.
Absolutely. Zach Aston-Reese will sign low because he's not a high-profile, high-contract type player. That's solid. The fact that Seattle didn't take him, let's be real, that's a help to your team. But again, I mean, looking at the rest of it, again, I'll keep going back. Looking at the rest of the team right now, I mean, Zach Aston-Reese isn't helping that out. He's not. He's got your defensive mindset, bottom line set, but that's it. It's all he can really offer a new team like Seattle. Whereas in Pittsburgh, he's got his room to grow again. He's coming under another new contract. Don't expect it to be too super long of a term, but he's playing in a place he's already known. He's familiar with the system, with the style of play, with what his role is now with just Teddy Bluger. And that's, again, also another contract that got re-signed. Great deal. It's going to be interesting to see who they stick with, those two, because if there was one line that was stapled together through the past 2 seasons, it was,
Yeah.
Blueger, Aston Reese, and Tanev. Now it's going to be interesting to see who they stick in there. Was there a time, because I know everyone got hurt this year, that Aston Reese and Blueger, it was just those two and Tanev was hurt?
Yes. Yeah, there was a time that was the case because once Aston Reese came back from shoulder surgery, he was in the rest of the season.
Okay.
And Blueger was healthy towards the end of the season when Tanev was still out. So I don't remember who they put him with. I think Freddie Gaudreau, if I remember correctly, was the guy that they saddled on that line. And I think also for a game or two, Anthony Angelo played on that line. But, I mean, if you're going to say you're going to lose one of those three players, he might be the most charismatic. He might be the biggest fan favorite, but you're going to pick Brandon Tanev because he does bring a lot of energy to the table. But your two best penalty killers are Aston Reese and Blueger. So to be able to sign Blueger for the contract that you did and be able to retain Aston Reese, at least at this moment, before trying to sign him, I think that's a good step for Ron Hextall and Brian Burke, and I think they're probably pretty pleased right now with the way that this is all transpired this week.
Yeah. They have to be. I mean, again, it's not a Pettersson contract out the door or a Zucker out the door, but it's more help than what they were going to get if they did take Zach Aston Reese because contract. Again, we got a little bit more space now. Again, it's not all the breathing room we would have wanted, but you add in the McCann deal and then the possible Jari and Pettersson deal, and it's all of a sudden you're looking kind of nice. You've got a little bit more breathing space. You can maybe go out and find a nice big free agent or find a new goalie, figure it out and continue on. The whole protection of Mike Matheson's still baffling me, but again,
but they wouldn't have taken him anyway.
I get it.
It didn't seem like they were looking to take any defenseman from Pittsburgh. It seemed like it was down to Zach Aston Reese, probably never Jason Zucker. I think they would have taken Zucker if the Penguins would have thrown one of those first-round picks their way that they were asking for certain things. And definitely weren't going to do that if you're Ronnie Hextall.
Speaking of that, have any of these picks come with compensation or has a trade been announced yet? Because that was kind of the one thing. Since all the picks got leaked out and put out, that was kind of the one thing that reporters like, hey, you should tune in anyway because there might be trades and there might be compensation. Has there been any of that yet?
Not up until the Penguins one. I know I haven't watched since. I did record it to see what the rest of it was, but not up until the Pittsburgh Penguins selected was there a trade made. I would have expected maybe Florida would have made a trade with Florida to make sure that they took Drieger, but I didn't see anything. What I think, looking at this Seattle one, and what we're going to talk a little bit more about the Penguins before we fully jump in to what we've seen on the roster for Seattle. But what I think Seattle's going to do, they're going to probably hit the free agent market pretty hard. I think that's where they're going, and I think they also have a couple trades in place. But that's just my personal opinion.
They should, because, I mean, beating a dead horse, this team doesn't look great right now. But that's what made Vegas very interesting. Whenever they picked their team, some of their main players came from the expansion draft, but they made a flurry of trades immediately following their expansion draft. And that's kind of what built them into a cup finalist that season. It's very interesting. I think the bar was set super high for Seattle, so Vegas kind of screwed them there. But who knows? It's that's what they're definitely going to have to do. And with all that cap space, they have their eye on someone. They have to. I
would imagine so. And you talk about trades for the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, that brought in Riley Smith along with Jonathan Marchessault, who ended up being two of their best players. I believe that also brought in a guy like Alex Tuck and also a guy like Shea Theodore, who had Norris votes this past season. So it definitely helped the Vegas Golden Knights, and I think that also hurt the Seattle Kraken because NHL general managers, as we saw last Saturday, we're not going to allow Seattle to just take what they want in order for the rest of the 30 teams to stay intact. I think the rest of the 30 teams knew that, hey, we need to get something out of this. And hence we saw, obviously, Hollander and a 7th round pick back to Pittsburgh in favor of Jared McCann to Toronto. And we mentioned earlier, we know that they got rid of a couple of the longer-term contracts signed by general manager Jim Rutherford. There's still a couple on this roster. Mike Matheson comes to mind. That is obviously the worst of all of them. But also John Marino and Jake Gensel. They're longer-term contracts, higher cap hits. The only problem is is a higher opportunity they yield successful results throughout the entire length of those contracts.
Yeah, you have a little more confidence in those two.
Yeah, especially with Gensel, a point per game player the last 2 years.
Yeah, Gensel you have confidence in. Marino, you just hope it wasn't a sophomore slump, because that's a big deal to just kick out the door if he doesn't turn it around. So he needs to have a good season this year, or oh boy. Because we had, if anyone remembers a long time ago, we had Matt Venzel on the show, and I asked him, who do you think the future captain of this team is? Because one day Crosby's going to be gone. And I was a little surprised by hearing a John Marino answer. So that's not a guy you want to see flub his chances in the NHL.
Yeah, when you look at those two guys, you're hoping that they can produce to the levels that we know. Obviously, Jake Gensel hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. John Marino had a rough second year, but if he can revert at least 75% of what we saw in his first year, then I think you can at least have a lot more confidence after the following season. So I have confidence John Marino can come back. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with the rest of the roster, though. It's going to be fun. And you mentioned Zach Aston Reese. We can see a signing coming for him probably in the next week or two. But if you look at the rest of the Pittsburgh Penguins roster right now, there's a lot that remains to be seen. They do have 7 forward or defensemen under contract. They have 2 goalies under contract, and now they're down to, I believe, either 10 or 9 forwards. But that's also with Anthony Angelo in the minors. That's also with some other guys that could come up signed, but it's still in the minor leagues. But it's a lot of moving and shaking that's going to happen. And we've just seen the beginning of it with Seattle.
Yeah, we have. And it's it'll be interesting to see what the future holds, this summer holds for this team, because again, things need to happen. You mentioned all those players that need to be re-signed, and that we only have 9 forwards, you said?
It was 10 earlier today. I have to double check the cap friendly, but I'm pretty sure it's either 9 or 10 once they took Tanev's off.
All right, yeah. Like I mean, we said it before. It's going to be a fun summer. It'll be an interesting summer. God, we only hope for the best, because, because Hextall and Burke have their work cut out for them, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, we have a couple more things to discuss revolving around the Seattle expansion draft here in 2021. Obviously, one of them is going to be the roster. We'll get to that in a minute. Horwat, what have you thought of ESPN's broadcast so far tonight?
I haven't seen much of it. Remember, I was flipping around streams?
That's right. You did say that. I know it is funny that it took about 6 picks to get somebody with an actual personality up on stage, and unfortunately, that was Macklemore. So Dominic Moore coming over from NBC Sports to ESPN, I think he needs a little practice showing a little bit more personality. Kevin Weeks did a pretty good job in the few skits that he had, but yeah, definitely going to need a little bit more personality from the ESPN hosts for sure.
Good. Yeah, you will. Yeah, who did they have on? I did see Dominic Moore was there. Everyone saw the fish throw with Kevin Weeks.
That wasn't Alexander Kerfoot. It was Jared McCann.
But did you see there was a second video where it was McCann?
I did not see the second video that showed McCann, no.
There's a little backstage Hollywood thing that in most shows and like award shows and stuff like this where like multiple names are possible, they will rehearse like
with all the names.
With all the names. Or with completely different names. But I guess in this case they were just kind of rehearsing with multiple names from, for example, the Leafs.
Yeah.
So, because I did see there was a McCann video as well. So, yeah, and I guess that's how they do like, award shows. You kind of rehearse with all of them, just so you have cameras, lights, and stuff like that set. At least that's how they do it for award shows. Whereas this, I don't know, just got to have all the names, just so you know all the names, because it was so interesting stuff. But that's a little backstage Hollywood stuff.
As far as the ESPN broadcast is concerned, I did expect a little bit more considering it was their first event with the NHL since they re-signed that TV deal. It was cool to see the X Games before. Apparently that 12-year-old beating Tony Hawk and getting the gold medal, that was pretty cool. But as far as the actual NHL expansion draft coverage is concerned, it could have been a little bit better. It was a little wonky, but it is the first one. Hopefully it improves from there.
Yeah, It will. They'll have their second chance with the regular draft in just a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. When it comes to the team, I don't want to keep talking about how bad it might be. Jamie Alexiak, another former Penguin, by the way. Big old contract. Did you see that?
Yeah, I didn't see the exact contract. Do you have it in front of you?
Let me pull up Cap Friendly again, and I can tell you. But it's as of last time I checked, he was the highest paid defenseman on the team.
Well, that's not saying much. They did sign a lot of young players and a lot of prospects, basically. But while you do that, there is we'll pull up what the roster was expected to be earlier today. This is from the Slapshot Sweethearts on Twitter. They posted this Twitter rumored picks, but this is pretty much so far everything that we've seen. Horwat, you've mentioned that you think it's a little underwhelming what this roster looks like. What do you think of some of the selections? We already mentioned Jordan Eberle. We mentioned a guy like Vitek Vanacek, Jared McCann, Yanni Gourde, and Brandon Tanev we talked about. But looking at this team, is it a playoff team to you in its first year as of now?
Not really. They have a couple of guys that can be very good top end, but then kind of nothing in the middle. I think Thomas Franklin put it best that they don't have a middle six really.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I mean, they're going to put McCann there because that's probably their best option at middle six, but don't use him at center. You use him at center, you're screwed. Not that McCann's not a good center, but he's more of a winger, and that's where he excels in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too much else. What we're not seeing here is the Colin Blackwell in New York, which we thought maybe there would be a trade or something involved. I don't know.
Yeah.
Those
are the only two missing. Him and the Detroit Red Wings for Dennis Chalowski, a 24-year-old defenseman.
Yeah, who I know nothing about. So, but yeah, like the Colin Blackwell thing, very confusing just because apparently there was going to be some sort of trade and it involved Giordano, which I guess didn't happen because Giordano is listed on the Cap Friendly as on their team. So that's an official pick. There you go. He is the highest paid defenseman behind Jamie Alexiak, 4.60, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years at 4.6. That's a lot for Jamie Alexiak, man.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what garners that. I mean, I like the big rig, don't get me wrong, but that's a large contract. I guess it's contract for contract's sake for a team that's trying to reach the cap floor at the very minimum, but I'm not exactly sure.
But on a team that's going to have Giordano, Adam Larson, Vince Dunn, I mean, those are just the confirmed ones that are on the Cap Friendly here. Hayden Fleury, is he playing ahead of any of those guys? Maybe Hayden Fleury, obviously.
Maybe Hayden Fleury, and honestly, I could see him and Giordano being the top pair, possibly.
Ooh, okay. Whenever I drafted my team, which was far superior, I think he made like the third line. But I don't know. My team was also backstopped by Carey Price and Kaapo Kähkönen, which neither of those happened. But I don't know. Carey Price would have been so much fun. The Eurovechkin thing, which I think we talked about in shoutouts and callouts, tons of fun. But no, the NHL is no fun.
No, I saw Linda Cohn on the pregame, or at least heard. I was listening to the ESPN pregame, or not pregame, but pre-show for the expansion draft, and she said that she predicts they'll make the playoffs. Clearly, not going to go to the Stanley Cup is her exact words, but she predicted they're going to make the playoffs out of that Pacific Division. I don't see it too much. I see a way in which they can because of how weak that division could be.
That division's bad.
Obviously, Vegas is going to team that's going to make it out there. I would imagine Edmonton with Connor McDavid and Draisaitl are going to make it there. And then I think there's going to be only one other team. I don't think they're going to nab any of the two wild card spots. I think the Central will take both of them. So they're going to have to beat out a team like the LA Kings that might be a little bit better this year. They're going to have to beat out a team like, who knows, maybe the Ducks take a couple steps forward, but realistically, they're going to be on the bubble there. I think only 3 teams in that Pacific, as I look at it right now, are going to make the playoffs. And if they can edge out that third place team, because I think the top 2 are locks with Vegas and Edmonton, But if they can edge out maybe a Vancouver, maybe a Calgary that could be there, then possibly make the playoffs. But realistically, looking at the roster as it stands right now, I don't think they're going very far, even if they do.
I don't think so either, but we gotta watch ourselves. This is what we said last time. And again, it's gonna suck for them all year being compared to Vegas, but guess what?
It's gonna happen.
They put you in a bad hole. Blame them, not everyone else, because that's just what's gonna happen. You're gonna compare those two organizations, but that's literally only because Vegas went to the Cup final in their first year. If they just coasted their first year, not even their second year, if they were good their second year, whatever, but in their first year, if that didn't happen, we're just talking about Vegas as being just another bad team.
I mean, not necessarily. They've made the playoffs all 4 years. Not only that, but they've made the conference finals 3 of the 4
I was
seasons.
talking about Seattle being bad.
Oh, team. Seattle being bad? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's tough to tell before anybody's hit the ice. You don't know. Maybe Jared McCann is the next Jonathan Marchessault or the next William Karlsson. Who really knows? But looking at this team right now, a team that is led by Jordan Eberle and Yanni Gourde, who that's another thing. The Tampa Bay Lightning have now lost 2 of their 3 third liners from the back-to-back cups. That's going to be tough for them to come around. But I know they got a little bit lucky in the cap situation with Gourde going out. But looking at the rest of this team, at least Vegas had a guy in Marc-Andre Fleury coming off of back-to-back cups, specifically the 2017 run where he backstopped the first 2 rounds. Whereas you got a lot of unproven quantities there with Chris Driedger and Vitek Vanacek from the Washington Capitals. So if they pan out, Ron Francis will look like a genius. But there's a chance that they don't pan out.
Yeah. I mean, that division is bad, so maybe they stumble their way in.
Possibly.
This is why we play the games, though. And it'll be exciting because they're a new team anyway. It'll be fun to watch these new guys in their new homes, just trying to match, if not excel, what the Vegas Golden Knights did in their first year, because that's why you are in this league. That's what you want to be doing. I just this team looks bad on paper, but when you don't know half the names, that's kind of why.
Yeah, and as we say with the Pittsburgh Penguins, there's a lot of offseason still left, and Seattle's going to have some cap space to work with. Whether they use it this offseason or if they wait to use it, they might make some trades. Who knows? Because that was a big thing with Vegas, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
They made trades during and after the expansion draft. They made not really any big signings following that, but you look at some of the trades they've made in the first 4 years of their existence, bringing in Mark Stone, who's now their captain, bringing in Pacioretty, moving a lot of pieces around. I know James Neal was an inaugural player on that team. Those are the reasons that we saw Vegas as a team that could possibly get into the playoffs in the same division, may I remind you. But Seattle, the names just aren't clicking on that certain level. Even Jonathan Marchessault was a 30-goal scorer in Florida before he got taken by the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm not sure, but if McCann finds his stride and if Brandon Tanev goes off, I mean, good for him. I'm going to be happy for him. It sucks that the Penguins had to lose him, but it seems like it's in a way that Ron Hextall is going to be able to turn this around. Hopefully he uses that cap space for good and not evil, but that's what we're going to do here the next couple of weeks. We're going to sit here and we're going to watch and see what he does with the space he just created. Yeah,
we are. And when it comes to Seattle, players to keep an eye on are pretty much Giordano, former
Norris
winner, former captain, could be the captain of that team if they want to select one right away. That'd be cool. Donskoy might be able to pop off, even though I know he's kind of a bottom 6 guy. Also, Megan, I know I can hear you literally crying in the other room.
I was about to say we might have to end this soon so you can console your girlfriend, because I know this is not going to be easy for her.
It's not. Just players to keep an eye out for. Vince Dunn is supposed to be really good. He'll be fun to watch over there on a new team. And then Jared McCann, because this lineup's kind of thin forward-wise, and he's got the ability to absolutely pop off, and he'd be one of those guys to do it. Just looking at this list, there's not too many other people Jordan Eberle, who can set this team apart. That's going to be the issue there, setting that team apart.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. If you're listening back on podcast version, we will be back after a quick break with our shout outs and call out segment. But if you're on the live stream, we thank you, whether it was on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. We appreciate you tuning in and spending a little bit of time with us here. We know that it is not easy to lose players in the expansion draft. Luckily, there's not another one coming down the pike for a very long time, at least expectedly, not a very long time. And the Pittsburgh Penguins do have some cap space, so there's a lot that's going to happen in the near future. But like we mentioned, we're going to take a quick break. If you're on podcast version, we'll be back with shout-outs and call-outs. But if you're just watching live, thank you very much. We'll see you guys the next time you tune in. Have a good night.